Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gilly Hanifah Iswari from English Department 2020. And today I will be presenting an academic research paper. So now let's begin. The research entitled is School Age Gender Gap in Reading Achievement, examining the influences of item format and intrinsic reading motivation, that written by Francisca Suave, Neil McAlpany, and Matthias Trantal. Alright, so the contents of this presentation is include the first is introduction or background research, and then the second is the methodology and the result and discussion, and then the drawbacks, and the last is the conclusion. First, let's tackle to the introduction with the background of the study. So the study investigates the interaction between gender and item format in both 10 and 15-year-old students by conducting DIF analysis based on two German samples of large-scale assessment of reading comprehension. So why the researcher take this topic is because reading comprehension is broadly defined as the active extraction and construction of meaning from various text types. Hence, it is very important for educational success. See Cantor et al. 2011, Snow 2002. Reading comprehension is assumed to be influenced by reading behavior, which itself is substantially affected by reading motivation. Baker, McAlpany, and Kartenberg 2010, Wickfield, Eccles, Schiffel, Reuser, and Daviskian 2006. One important dimension of the multifaceted construct in reading motivation is intrinsic reading motivation. And then to gain insights into gender-related specific advantages in reading. Or in addition, more recent studies concerned with specific aspects of reading reveal that the gender differences cannot be considered as being equivalent across all requirements of reading tests, but differ in regard to specific aspects of reading competence. Clinton et al. In 2012 found differences in specific cognitive components of reading comprehension in fourth-grade children that were related in subsequent study to different memory performances or semantically versus episodically based. Moreover, it was found that boys' reading comprehension depends largely on the text content, whereas girls' achievement is hardly influenced by this factor. This finding implies the relevance of taking motivational variables into account when studying in the gender gap in reading. Now let's move on to the methodology. The first is the sample. So the study using large samples of 10 and 15-year-old readers who have worked on CR and MC item in reading assessments. Analyses were based on data from the 2011 PIRLS and 2009 PISA. A total of 4,000 fourth graders participated in the German PIRLS assessment in 2011. Boys were slightly in the majority, there is 50.5%. And the data were collected within the framework of PISA, which in Germany was conducted in April and May 2009 by a national consortium coordinated by the German Institute for International Educational Research, or DIPF, in Frankfurt. And the study measures three measures. The first is reading competence, the second is intrinsic reading motivation, and the third is students' background. And then the next is data analysis. The cluster samples resulting from the survey design of PISA and PRLs may lead to bias standard errors in significance tests. To avoid such bias, researchers compute out standard error using the jackknife procedure, a resampling technique especially useful for variance and bias estimation, suggested by the Associated Technical Report. PRLs Martin et al. 2007, PISA OECD 2012. Researchers conducted t-tests for preliminary analysis of data and interpreted mean differences with cohorts. And to investigate the research questions, the researcher conducted analysis of uniform DIF following the generalized linear mixes model or GLMM approach proposed by Debook et al. 2011. Now let's proceed with the result and discussion. First is the results. Results on the interaction between intrinsic reading motivation and item format differ for 10 and 15-year-old students. Findings suggest that high motivation explains specific advantages in responding to CR reading items only in the group of 15-year-old readers, whereas 10-year-old readers do not profit from higher levels of intrinsic reading motivation in responding to those items. One possible explanation for this result might be that, on average, intrinsic reading motivation depends less on proficiency in elementary compared with secondary school students. As far as students at the age of 15 are concerned, the estimate of coefficient of the main effect of gender differed significantly from zero. The interaction between gender and item format was also significant, as in the 10-year-olds and 15-year-old female students showed a specific advantage in CR reading items compared with boys of the same age and of the same level of reading competence. Nonetheless, the overall advantages of 15-year-old girls in reading achievement did not vanish in the model after controlling for their advantages in CR items. So in conclusion, however, hypotheses 1.1 and 1.2 are supported by the data. Girls have an advantage in CR reading items at both 10 and 15 years. Girls performed significantly better in CR items compared with boys of the same level of reading competence as measured by MC and CR items together. Next is discussion. The interaction between intrinsic reading motivation and item format reveals a differentiated pattern of results across age groups. Whereas there was a significant advantage of highly motivated 15-year-old readers in responding to CR items, this was not the case for 10-year-old students. Nevertheless, contrary to our theoretically derived expectation, 10 and 15-year-old girls' better performance in responding to CR items did not decrease after controlling for intrinsic reading motivation. Although girls show higher levels of intrinsic reading motivation, and this did not explain their advantage in responding to CR items. And the finding that the interactions between gender and item format does not decrease after controlling for intrinsic motivation in both age groups suggests that other aspects that were not included in this study might influence this interaction more strongly. Alright, now we move on to the drawbacks of this research. Nevertheless, a number of factors are likely to limit the generalizability of the results reported. The first is the investigation of reading achievement is based on a specific context. And the second is the researcher treated the multidimensional construct of intrinsic reading motivation as unidimensional for measurement reasons. And the third is the categorization based on biological gender could be differentiated further by focusing more on the social and cultural gender role. And then the last is the researcher employed just one method to identify DIF, and it is not known whether the identified DIF effects would vary if some other methods were to be used for DIF detection. Okay, we move to the last content that is conclusion. The present investigation was conducted to extend previous research on the gender gap in reading comprehension by focusing on the first is a core aspect in assessment or the item format, and the second is an important characteristic of the test takers studied or their intrinsic reading motivation. The results report that The results reported here suggest a promising way to achieve a fuller explanation of the gender gap in reading achievement, and they have implications of subsequent research and the further development of educational practice and school administration. Alright, so we came to the end of the presentation. So I hope the presentation that I convey that can add the audience insight and can be useful for us. Once again, I'm Gilly Hanifah Iswari. Thank you and have a good day.